Hello and welcome to Piano Shack with me, Woody. In this video, I thought we could try and explain and describe the differences between desktop looper pedals like this, the RC202, and foot pedal floor looper pedals like this, and this, and this, and this. To help you perhaps answer the question, which form factor and use case is best for you? So let's cut to the chase. The most obvious distinction, as I hinted at in the introduction, is the form factor. This is a desktop looper pedal, the RC202, that's designed to be put on a desk and operated with primarily your hands and your fingers. Whereas this, the RC500, is designed to be put on the floor and operated with your feet using these three switches here. But maybe it's not quite that cut and dry, because a looper pedal like this one can work perfectly well on the desktop as well and be operated with your fingers and hands. And this one, the desktop pedal, you can actually attach an external foot switch like this one and operate it with your feet. Although you probably wouldn't want to put this on the floor and stomp on these buttons with your feet. I don't think that would end well. So there is a lot of overlap in these product lines. So let's start off by talking about the similarities, and then we'll go into some of the subtle differences. Well, all of these pedals, from the very budget Boss RC1 to the almost flagship RC500 and the desktop looper, offer the traditional record a phrase and then you can play back your phrase, it will loop, and you can overdub over the top of it as many times as you like. That's pretty much standard for all of these. The more basic ones are just single tracks. You can record one phrase and then overdub over it as much as you like and then jam over that single phrase. But these more advanced models here offer, in fact, 2-track recordings. So you can have two phrases that you're working with and building up at the same time. Now, these might be two phrases that are running in parallel, but you do have control to start and stop each phrase separately, individually, and add overdubs to one or the other of the phrases. Or you can configure them so that these two phrases or tracks can run sequentially. So you could have, for example, a verse and a chorus and then switch between them and add overdubs to each part. Both these are 2-track loopers, but Boss even make 5-track loopers, both in the desktop and pedal format. Whilst we talk about similarities, I'm going to ignore these budget options for the time being, because even in the pedal lineup, there's huge differences in the range as you go up in price. So let's compare the floor pedal and the desktop looper of a similar price. These two, I think, are about $300. Both of these have drum tracks. In fact, this one has a pretty sophisticated drum machine built in, and that's nice. You can jam along with drums as you're recording your loops. On these more sophisticated loopers, you can also store and then recall your loops if you want to jam with them at a later date. And they offer some basic effects, although typically a lot more effects on these desktop loopers. You'll also find USB connectivity to connect to the PC and transfer loops back and forth. These ones also offer MIDI sync, so you can connect these up to your DAW or a drum machine, for example, and have it sync up your loops to MIDI clock. So we've established there are some key similarities, but are there any differences that you need to be aware of? Again, I'll be talking about roughly equivalent models in terms of price, so we'll compare the RC500 and the RC202 here. The first obvious difference to me is the build quality. This is far more rugged, solid, and durable. This one is really built to last because you put it on the floor and stomp on it with your feet. With this one, you really wouldn't want to do that. It's made of plastic on the top. It does have a metal base, but This is designed to be operated just with your fingers. Another thing is the controls. Because you're operating this with your feet, you only get 3 switches that you can operate during a performance as you're building up your loops and your composition. It would be hard to do any more than that with your feet during a performance, right? But the RC202 has loads of buttons enabling you to very quickly start and stop loops, do overdubs, select a track, mute a track, adjust the volumes, and so on and so on. So much more hands-on controls, more or less 1 button per function, whereas on your floor pedals, you'll need to use special moves like long presses and double presses, which is all a little bit trickier to do in the heat of a moment than just using your hands here. Remember, I said though that you can operate this with your fingers, but it's still a limited number of controls, and pressing these bugger off! This guy is a real noob. Now, whilst you could put this on your desk and operate the switches with your hands, they're kind of stiff and hard to press, to be honest. Certainly not as easy and accurate to use as these big squishy rubber buttons here. Both of these have effects, but this one has many more hip and modern, slightly cheesy perhaps, performance effects, DJ kind of effects. You can sweep filters and enable jitter and scatter and beat repeat effects if that's your thing. It's kind of fun. This one has nothing like that. Although this one does have a strange half speed and reverse effect that are rather useless. This one does actually have your full-size MIDI ports, which is nice, whereas on this one you'll need those little adapters, but it's no big deal. I was going to say that the desktop loopers are more designed for synths, beatboxers. You can connect microphones, for example, using the microphone preamp and inputs, but this one has all of that as well. So let's try and answer the question then that we posed in the beginning of the video. Which type of looper should you get? Well, as you gather, the waters are a little bit muddy and it's really hard to say, but I will say this much. If you're a guitarist, both of your hands are occupied, so I think your best bet is to use your feet. So guitarists should definitely be looking at looper pedals like this or this, and perhaps stay away from the desktop loopers. You see, when we're playing keyboards, we can, if we want, just record one hand at a time, leaving the other hand free to operate the looper. Although remember, it is possible to connect external foot switches to the desktop loopers and use your feet. What would I get? I've bought all of these looper pedals with my own money with the intention of trying them all out and then just keeping the one that I like the most. And it won't be, unfortunately, the RC202. You can go and check out my earlier video on this one. The problem I had with this was the audio quality was really rather poor. The recording quality was fine, but there's a lot of hiss and hum from the microphone preamps, no matter what settings I use. I really did find, unfortunately, that it did degrade the sound quality of any synthesizers that I was connecting to the looper. Now, with a noisy guitar, which tends to have a little bit more hum anyway, maybe that wouldn't be an issue at all. And this one does have a noise gate to filter out any hum and hiss, but it did just interfere with the reverb tails. So for me, I'd lean more towards the more guitar pedal oriented loopers. I just love the premium build quality of these things, and also you can use them on the floor if you want with a guitar, or you can use them on the desktop with a keyboard and operate it with your hands. So as you can tell, I'm still trying to figure this out, but I thought it might be helpful for you if you're thinking about buying something like this to hear the conclusions that I've come to so far. But I'd love to hear from you if you have any thoughts, then please do let me know in the comments, as you usually do. Finally, it does cost me a lot of money to run this channel, buy all this gear, and a lot of time and effort to make the videos. So please, all I ask in return is that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and thank you very much if you already have. Until then, I'll see you next time. Cheerio.